Dream Team, it's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. Here we are with Putin's energy war against Europe explained. I feel like I need this explained because I've seen a lot of videos where it's kind of talking about Putin's energy war against Europe, against Germany, against different countries in Europe, and I don't really understand much about it, and so I think it's a dope video to see it explained. And I know what is his name? He does a great job of explaining. Johnny Harris, he does an incredible job of explaining things on his YouTube channel. Before we jump into this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, give the video a thumbs up so it gets suggested. Social media, Patreon, all up top. You don't subscribe to any of it, put all the links in the description. All you gotta do is hit the link, follow me, talk to me, human. I talk back. What we got?
Sabotage underwater weeks now.
Vladimirovich Putin.
Vladimir Putin has a trick up his sleeve, and he's finally using it. It's a weapon he's been holding on to for years, waiting for this moment. The weapon is this umbilical cord that ties Russia to Europe. Infrastructure and fuel, now a weapon of war. It starts up here in this freezing cold part of Russia, where under the snow and ice, there's energy from plants and animals that lived 100 million years ago, now stored in the cracks of rocks thousands of meters underground. From here, it is sucked up and sent through pipes that are in land and water, all the way to Europe, where it is burned in power plants to boil water, to turn turbines and make electricity to keep the lights on in Europe. The gas is also burned right in European homes to cook a meal or to heat a home. Oh, and it's not just one big pipeline. Natural gas moves through a mind-bogglingly massive network of pipes linking Russia to Europe.
That's crazy.
What I want to do here is quickly get you up to speed on what is happening and how these pipelines have been turned into a weapon in a weird version of hybrid warfare. We call it.
I'm already like very intrigued. It's like learning new stuff because I didn't know that Europe had gotten a lot of its energy, a lot of that natural gas and everything from Russia, and coming from so many pipelines. And so I can see how if Russia decides to say, well, we won't provide you that anymore, I can see that how that can turn into a weapon of war. And so this is already very intriguing.
In a weird version of hybrid warfare. We call it hybrid because you have two things going on here. You've got this traditional old school style war playing out. You've got artillery and foot soldiers and cruelty against civilians. You have the conquest and annexation of land. That's like old school style war. And yet Putin hasn't declared an official war. He's covering this whole thing up back home, calling it a special military operation, while simultaneously stealing a bunch of land in Ukraine and drafting hundreds of thousands of Russians to the battlefield. As someone who studies conflict, this has gripped me because it's playing out not just on these battlefields, but on a bunch of other battlefields too. Energy markets, infrastructure, financial systems, and information sharing on the internet that simply has never existed before like this. And it's on these battlefields where the big nuclear powers of our world are going head to head in an increasingly dangerous way. So I'm gonna walk you through the moves and the counter moves of this hybrid war so that we can understand how Vladimir Putin has turned these pipelines into a weapon of war.
On Europe's ongoing energy crisis, leaders in the region gathering.
This week, the Russian energy company Gazprom drastically reduced its deliveries
ahead of the looming winter season. On fossil fuels from Russia.
Crazy, man.
Before we continue, I want to thank today's sponsor, NordVPN, who makes a product I deeply appreciate and use all of the time. The VPN allows you to access content from different countries. Like I can watch like Netflix. Clicking this link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 4 months of free NordVPN on the 2-year plan.
Shoot.
Best part is you can try it out for free for 30 days and get all your money back if it's not useful to you. Let's get back to the moves and counter moves of the war in Ukraine. First thing to note here, this is not just a war between Russia and Ukraine. it's also a war between Russia and a huge group of countries that we're calling the West. Russia started it, but now both sides are engaged in a complex game of 4D chess. Or maybe more accurately, we could call it a high-stakes game of chicken. So let's look at the moves and countermoves on either side and try to make sense of why I'm calling these boring pipelines a weapon. As we know, this really started in February on a physical battlefield with a full-scale invasion. The superpowers in the West couldn't intervene directly with like troops and stuff because that would risk an escalation between nuclear countries. But they also couldn't let Russia just do this. So the West's countermove to Russia's invasion was to cut Russia off from a huge number of its economic ties to the world.
The European Union and its partners are working to cripple Putin's ability to finance his war machine.
The second thing the West did as retaliation for the invasion looks like this.
My administration authorized another $200 million to keep a steady flow of weapons and ammunition moving to Ukraine.
The West has been...
I don't know if you guys probably know, and I'm probably dumb for asking, but why did Russia even want to go to war in the first place? Like, why did they come over and try to take over Ukraine and try to take that land? What was the reasoning in the first place? I don't even understand that part. It's crazy. But y'all, please help me in the comment section. But keep
moving to Ukraine.
The West has been pouring a huge amount of money and weapons and intelligence support and ammunition into Ukraine to help them fight this war. I mean, look at this. This. Yes, I print Wikipedia articles sometimes. Like, why did I print it? Because I like to look at it in physical form. It makes me feel smart. This massive document is the list of foreign aid to Ukraine during this war. And by foreign aid, we mean like weapons and ammunition. I printed it in black and white. I really want color flags. That's the whole reason I printed it. Can we reprint this? I need color flags. I'm going to print a new one with colored flags. Okay, here it comes. Pressing print. I'm getting my color list. No, I didn't print every single page. I just printed a few. Just really like color flags. The point is that none of us can fathom how much military hardware has been delivered by the West to Ukrainians to fight this war. If you just glance at a few pages of this meticulously built Wikipedia article, it just starts to blow your mind. Like, who knew that Portugal was giving 10 million euros worth of military support to Ukrainian armed forces? Wait till you get to the United States section of this thing. Not only is it billions and billions and billions of taxpayer dollars, but then it's loads of really advanced equipment. Javelin anti-tank missiles, 5 helicopters, 200 shotguns, 200 machine guns, 40 million rounds of small arms ammunition, just 1,000 pistols, 400 machine guns, anti-personnel munitions, 15 tactical vehicles, 50 armored Humvees. By the way, can we all just appreciate that we live in a time where there are people who spend their days assembling all of this on an open source platform like Wikipedia so that all of us can read it. And yes, we have to go and fact check it and make sure it's well sourced. All glory be to the people who assembled this list. So, not surprisingly, Putin is assembled this list. So, not surprisingly, Putin is not loving all of this support. So this was the West's countermove. It was sanctions and unfathomable amounts of military hardware sent to Ukraine. But wait, let's be clear what's happening here. The West is not giving billions of dollars worth of weapons and support to Ukraine out of the goodness of their hearts. This is a calculated response in an escalating conflict. The West has to show their adversary Russia that there's a cost to all of this behavior. Otherwise, Putin would get really comfortable stealing land. But again,
on everything. And he might start, you know what I'm saying, gaining power and trying to come for more land. And the more land he conquers, the more power he has. And that man might try to rule the world. And so yeah. It's like it seems like they're not trying to directly intervene because they don't want to escalate into nuclear war or anything like that. But at the same time, they're like, hey, like, we're gonna help Ukraine as much as we possibly can. Like, we're gonna give them the best of everything. We're gonna give them the best chance they got. And Putin over there, like, even though y'all not directly intervening, like, y'all stopping me from taking over this land. And the West, like, you got dang right, we stopping you from taking over that land. Like, it's just really unfortunate for all of those men and women that are dying in this war, that are giving their lives up. It's just a tragedy. But
this behavior. Otherwise, Putin would get really comfortable stealing land. But again, the West can't interfere directly, so they've been forced to fuel this conflict, using Ukraine as their proxy to push back Russia. Oh boy. Here comes the backlash. Yes, I just called this a proxy war, and lots of people in the West don't really like to frame it this way because it's literally a talking point of Russia's foreign minister that this is a proxy war from the West. But that's what it is. Let's be real about it. It really is the West's only move here. It's the best thing we could do. International relations nerds, I will see you down in the comments for a nice healthy debate on this point. The rest of us, let's move on.
A senior NATO official is warning that a potential Russian nuclear strike would almost certainly trigger a physical response from many allies.
So, needless to say, things
I don't think they do a nuclear strike because what is it called when, like, it's assured, it's mutual destruction. You do a nuke strike, you're starting a world war. You don't want that. You don't want that kind of war. I mean, you could be destructive because of the nuclear weapons that you have, but it'd be mutual destruction. Like, you will get destroyed too. And so, I don't think they do. I don't. That's just me, personal opinion. I don't think they do it. Like I said, I don't know much about it. I don't know much about how Putin thinks, and so keep it going.
Response from many allies.
So, needless to say, things are kind of escalating in this conflict. Putin keeps flexing, saying that he's considering using nuclear weapons and reminding us that he's very serious. Okay, wait a minute. This whole, like, I'm not bluffing, like, isn't that exactly what someone says when they're bluffing? Putin, get a better poker face, bro. He's not using nukes anytime soon. And God,
I might not know, but I feel like common sense tells you that it's just not a good
says
move.
When they're bluffing. Putin, get a better poker face, bro. He's not using nukes anytime soon. And God, I hope I'm not wrong on that. Like, imagine the apology video I'll be making if I'm wrong on this prediction.
I feel the same way.
Anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is that nukes are not the next move for Putin. He's got one more massive trick up his sleeve, and it looks like this. These pipelines and the gas that flows through them. These pipelines are the umbilical cord between Russia and Europe. They're the result of years of a mutually beneficial relationship because Russia, who's got tons of natural gas, is able to serve the demand in European countries who have built their economies off of that natural gas. For a long time, this was a very mutually beneficial relationship. I mean, look at all these European leaders and Putin in 2012, and they're talking about this new pipeline they're opening, and they're giddy and excited because they're all cooperating on energy. Putin gets loads of money, Europe gets natural gas to build their economy off of, everyone's happy.
I believe in natural gas. Gas will be supplied directly by the shortest route, linking the major Russian gas reserves to European markets. We can guarantee this.
But it turns out this was a trap. What it ended up doing is putting a huge amount of leverage in the hands of this guy.
Facts.
A weapon that he's now using in this war.
That's crazy.
Putin's government has a controlling stake in the biggest gas company in Russia, which means that Putin himself can give the order to turn off the taps on these pipelines. Turn them off. And that's exactly what he did.
European gas prices again reached near record highs on
gas
Monday.
prices up 43% last week.
Gazprom says it is indefinitely halting the flow of gas through a key pipeline to
We are working hard to become independent of this gas supply.
And the question I always have when I hear this big news of like prices and I see graphs is like, what does this actually mean for Europeans? To understand that, you have to look at one more graph. What we see here is that Europeans need their natural gas most in the winter, when they burn that gas to heat their homes or to make electricity to keep their lights on during darker days. But it's not just heating homes. This cheap, abundant gas from Russia has been a foundational aspect of European economies, especially in Germany, which by far is the most reliant on this cheap gas from Russia. You just gotta look at a place like this. It's a town that is basically just a giant chemical plant in Germany. It's the biggest gas guzzler in the country. But I mean, like, come on, chemical plant kind of sounds boring, unimportant, right? Like, we can do without chemicals for a bit while we get through this crisis. No. No. That's what I thought for a moment. I was like, chemicals, that sounds like some, like what are people doing chemistry in there with natural gas? Like, I was not aware. I started tracing down.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure if it's like a whole town's worth of looking like a big chemical plant, I'm sure it's definitely super important if it takes up like almost a whole town's worth. And so I'm sure that it's something that can't be done without. But this is crazy, bro.
Chemistry in there with natural gas. Like, I was not aware. I started tracing down all of the products that are linked to this specific German chemical plant, and it's wild. I mean, next time you're driving down the road and you see one of these like weird looking buildings with a bunch of pipes, give it like a salute, because inside of this plant, they're making ammonia, which is used to make fertilizer, which is used to grow your food. They make the menthol for your toothpaste. And they make tons of chemicals that are necessary for building cars, which is Germany's biggest export. I didn't really grasp this before, but I now see that our modern industrial economy is like founded on chemicals, and you need a lot of natural gas to make chemicals. So as Russia strangles Europe from natural gas, it's having an effect on paper and steel and so much more. You need energy for all this stuff. So when the cost of energy goes up, the cost of everything goes up.
Inflation and soaring prices are biting hard.
Price of olive oil has gone up by 27%.
Consumer prices in Germany reach 8% higher than 1 year earlier. That's a level not seen since the 1970s oil crisis.
And this is exactly what Putin wants. This is his next move in the war. And notice the timing here. It's about to get really cold in Europe. Another mind-blowing fact here is that 70% of the energy that is used by European households is just to heat the homes, 70%. And about half of European homes rely on natural gas for heat. And where does that natural gas come from? Russia, well, no, not Russia.
Bro.
It doesn't come from Russia anymore. It now needs to come from somewhere else. Somewhere that doesn't have a bunch of pipelines that can pipe it in cheaply. It's either that or Europeans freeze this winter. Cue the current panic in Europe.
So this major energy crisis is on the brink of turning into a major economic and subsequently social crisis. This is crazy. This is definitely something to be afraid of. Wow. So where if you got to get it from somewhere, and if Russia cuts it off, where do you get it from at that point?
The current panic in Europe.
Diese schwere Energiekrise droht sich zu einer Wirtschafts- und im Verbund damit Sozialkrise auszuwachsen.
Two of our producers, Jack and Podgy, were recently in Berlin, and I asked them to go look for electric heaters to see if like it was easy to buy them. Like, is this panic real?
Is this thing on?
Hey Johnny.
We're about to like walk into an electronics store and see if this is actually true, and people are buying these electric heaters like crazy.
Wenn die weg sind, ist dann auch Geschichte. Die kaufen das Ding in Reserve. Wenn kein Gas mehr da ist, dann haben sie wenigstens die Chance, nicht bei minus 15 Grad da in der Butze zu hängen. Ne?
This is actually happening. They had like 5 or 6 still in the store on display, but he said they have nothing left back in storage. And once those 5 or 6 radiators are sold, they're not getting new ones.
Electric heater sales all over Germany seem to be going up. 76% this year over last by one estimate. Okay, but I hate to break it to you, Germany. The electricity that you need to run these electric heaters is now way more expensive too, because natural gas is also used to make electricity, and it drives up the price for all other forms of electricity as well. So yeah, Putin played his big wild card in this economic war by turning off the taps. And let's walk through his calculations here, because it wasn't just to like make Europeans suffer as payback. He has an end game. His goal is that by doing so, the people will get fed up and go to their leaders and be like, why are we supporting a war in Ukraine at our own expense? And under pressure, the leaders in Europe would then fracture and be more likely to go to President Zelensky, who they have lots of leverage over, and pressure him into making a deal with Putin to stop the war, give Putin all the land that he's annexed, and move on.
President Putin has announced the annexation of 4 regions of Ukraine that are controlled by Russian forces in the biggest seizure of territory in Europe since the Second World War.
And this would mean a big win.
This is wild, bro. Like, I see this. I see why y'all be like, cause I didn't know nothing about. I see why y'all be like, though Americans really don't know much. They don't know anything about what's going on outside of their country and all that. And there are a lot of us, I feel like, who are oblivious as I was. I mean, I knew there was a war going on with Ukraine and Russia. I didn't know that all this was happening in Europe and how much this all could affect Europe. Like, that's crazy, and I'm sure the rest of the world as well. Like, that's insane.
Seizure of territory in Europe since the Second World War.
And this would mean a big win for Putin. Moves and counter moves. That's what this is. And let me just say, Putin's plan is not working. This is happening right now and it's changing every day. So by the time you're watching it, boy, things could have changed. But there is a growing movement, especially in Germany, to protest these sanctions and this military aid to Ukraine.
Die Vorstellung, dass wir Putin dadurch bestrafen, dass wir Millionen Familien in Deutschland in die Armut stürzen und dass wir unsere Industrie zerstören, während Gazprom Rekordgewinne macht. Ja, wie bescheuert ist das denn?
People are taking to the streets. They're fed up with higher prices for something they don't think is worth it.
Dass die Leute sich keine Heizung mehr leisten können und dass eine Riesenaufrüstung stattfindet.
And as winter comes and the demand for gas increases to heat homes and keep the economy alive, this tension will only get worse. Just as Putin planned, using his energy weapon just at the right time to inflict the most amount of pain on Europe's economy.
Только одно. Как в известной русской сказке приговаривать: мерзни, мерзни, волчий хвост.
Okay, wait a minute. Did you catch this? We're talking about like high stakes, like global conflict, and Putin is invoking this folk tale in which a clever fox, presumably Putin himself, outsmarts this dumb wolf by tricking him to going down to a frozen lake and putting his tail in a hole in the ice to try to like catch fish. But eventually the wolf's tail freezes and the wolf is stuck until a bunch of villagers come down and beat him up. By the way, I talked to a Russian about this and she told me that like the fox is not portrayed as like a role model here. Like the fox is actually like a pretty unsavory character. And yet Putin wants to be the fox and the EU is the wolf.
Приговаривать: мерзни, мерзни, волчий хвост.
I'm in shock. And you think about all the people that are affected by this. It's just, I don't know. You just hate that humanity could be like this. It just sucks. You just, like I said, I don't understand why Russia wanted to annex, or Russia wanted Ukraine's land anyway. I don't get it. I don't understand any of it. And I feel like just all the people that are gonna suffer from this is crazy. And of course you want to support Ukraine. Of course you want to be on their side. But then at the same time, now it's starting to affect you personally. And all of these people, they can't afford these prices. Like she said, they're going to go into poverty. And it's like, wow, like, do we want to keep supporting something that's putting us in poverty, that's putting us in jeopardy, that's putting our lives at stake? And so it's crazy.
Wants to be the fox, and the EU is the wolf.
Приговаривать: мерзни, мерзни, волчий хвост.
Putin, man, he's just quite the storyteller. So that is what is going down here in this conflict. It is hybrid warfare with a particular 2022 flavor, something we've never seen before. And we don't really know what happens next. It's developing right now. But allow me to share with you a few closing facts that we should keep in mind that will help us make sense of this economic war. First, turning off the pipelines to Europe doesn't just hurt Europe, it hurts Russia too. In the short term, they've been making tons of money off of this surge in natural gas prices.
But because they're making so much money, but if they turn them off, then they won't.
In the short term, they've been making tons of money off of this surge in natural gas prices. But in doing so, they have severed their ties with their best, highest paying customer, Europe. They're now looking east for new customers, maybe in China and India, but none will pay the prices that Europe was willing to. Oh, and plus, they don't have nearly the network of pipelines that they have into Europe. Building those takes decades. But somehow this was worth it to Russia, to inflict short-term pain on Europe in exchange for a long-term hit to Russia's gas industry. Second, and speaking of long-term, yes, this is painful for Europe right now, but what it's going to do is quickly force them to look for new places to find their energy. Spoiler alert, in the short term, Qatar is going to get way rich off of all of this. Richer than they already are, if you can imagine. But the point is that this will accelerate Europe's already started transition away from fossil fuels. They're now being forced to speed that up. In other words, if they can weather this difficult time, they will come out way better off than they did before, and Putin will come away with way less economic leverage over them. And this gets to my last point, and this is a little bit more of my opinion and prediction on the situation, which is that this guy, Vladimir Putin, I think has overplayed his hand once again, using all of his leverage in one swoop and dramatically underestimating its ability to work. I mean, just go back. He miscalculated his army's ability to take over Ukraine's capital very swiftly. He miscalculated his army's ability to hold land. He miscalculated the response of the Ukrainian military and people to resist his invasion. He miscalculated the response from the West. And now it seems like he once again has miscalculated his ability to force Europe to stop supporting Ukraine through energy blackmail. He seems to be 0 for 5, which is good news, until you realize that every time he loses one of these bets, he escalates the conflict. What's scary is that Putin can't lose. He's not allowed to. If he loses, he gets thrown out of power back home. So I think he'll keep digging in his heels, using all of the tricks in his arsenal. I'm not totally sure where it goes from here, but I can tell you that this conflict is far from over.
This is crazy, bro. Yeah, I don't think